Hello, everyone. My name is Catherine Narvaez, and I am a student leader at the East Campus Student Development Office.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marcelo. I'm also a student leader on East Campus.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vivian, and I'm a student leader at the West Campus.
In celebration of the 52nd Annual Hispanic Heritage Month, we are celebrating all that it means to be Hispanic. Our heritage, our voice, specifically highlights the importance of having the opportunity to talk about the challenges that the Hispanic community faces. We want to thank our panelists, Fiorani Santana, student leader at the Student Government Association at East Campus, Aida Diaz, professor of Spanish at the West Campus, and Maruchi Guzman, executive director of Latino Leadership, Central Florida's most prominent Latino nonprofit community-based organization. Thank you all for being part of this important conversation.
We will now get started with the questions. The first and the foremost important question, what does Hispanic heritage mean to you?
Hispanic heritage to me is knowing that, there was people that came before me that made me who I am. When you look at my family, we kind of run the gamut of where countries that people were born, our skin color, what our hair looks like, even the language that we speak, but we all consider ourselves Latino or Hispanic. So for me, it's knowing who you are, knowing who makes up your family, whether you were born in New York and you can consider yourself Hispanic, or, you were born like me on the island of Puerto Rico. Everybody has something that kind of makes them, that gives them that fire of being Hispanic. I always tell even my daughter, who was born in Winter Park, Florida, that if you feel Hispanic, you are Hispanic. Nobody can take that away from you. So having a month to be able to celebrate our culture, celebrate authors, celebrate, leaders within our community, people that have helped kind of formulate what our community looks like, is a pretty awesome and sincere thing that we look forward to every year.
To me, when I think of being Hispanic, I think of basically the values that I was given when I was a child. And this is something that I share with most of the people who I know that are Hispanics and Latinos, and it's the values of family and the value of hard work. Since I was little, I was always presented to all these family members, and it was a huge number of people because nobody really was left behind. I feel like that comes from the fact that in Hispanic countries, there's a lot of things that happen with the economy, but I feel like everybody just looks for support from everybody in their family, and it's just this big community, and everybody who's your neighbor is this sense of having a community with the people around you, of people who genuinely care about you, and also with the value of hard work. I know that in Hispanic country, nothing is really guaranteed. I mean, in life, nothing is guaranteed, but especially in some of our countries. And since I was little, I was always taught that I needed to work hard in everything I was, whether that was a club or whether that was one of my classes, because I needed to stand out, especially becoming an immigrant. That was one of the most important things that I learned when I was little.
So for me, Hispanic heritage is many, many things. And for me, most importantly, is that I want to celebrate my heritage, not just in September and October, but every day, right? So when I'm talking about my heritage, I was born in Puerto Rico several years ago. And I take that with me wherever I go. I take my Puerto Rican with me wherever I go, even though I've been in the United States for many, 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 many years. My children were born here also, here in Winter Park as well. But they too carry the Puerto Rican in them. They carried it in there, and the food, right? And the expressions, how we celebrate holidays, what we value as far as family is concerned, our traditions, all of those things they take with them. And so for me, there's a history behind us that we also carry. We're so diverse, right? Just the whole area, North, Central, South America, and the Caribbean, we're all diverse as far as when we're looking at the Hispanic heritage. And so we bring many, many things to the table. So that's how I see the Hispanic heritage.
Well, thank you for the answers. A lot of people don't know the difference between Latino and Hispanic. So what does this difference mean to you?
For me particularly, a lot of people had told me before when I came into the country that I wasn't considered Latina. And I mean, I understand the whole thing where it's like sometimes the Caribbean is not considered part of Latin America, and same happens to Spain. So a Hispanic is a person that is part of a Spanish speaking language, and a Latino is someone who is part of like the region of Latin America. I mean, for me, doesn't make much different in how like I can find a lot of things in common with a lot of people in Latin America, and I never really understood the difference, nor take it as an offense or anything. But that's basically what I was told by other people about the difference.
I do a lot of writing for work and a lot of grant writing, just reporting on our clients, and I too use them interchangeably. I know that there's people that get super offended if you use one or the other, but having grown up in Orlando, you know, it was always Hispanic. And then after working with nonprofits, you know, I'm partnering with nonprofits from Texas, from Arizona, they use Latino more than we do. So it's just kind of a hodgepodge for me. I don't know. I don't tend to get offended by, you know, things that I can't control. So whatever people, you know, just as long as they don't assume everybody's from the same country, right? So we all bring different experiences and different, you know, like Ms. Diaz had mentioned, you know, food, you know, different things that make our countries what they are. But from using Hispanic or Latino, I'm not the one to ask because just depending on the temperature, what direction the wind's blowing, that's what I'm using. So
I want to agree with both of you, all right, because I think it's the way the pendulum swings, right, depending on the culture or what's happening right now. Because another term that you can throw in there is Latinx, right? And so for me, it was like I went to a conference, they were talking about Latinx, and I was like, okay, I'm really way behind. Okay, so where did this come from? And so like both of you have said, I do not get offended. Some people will say I'm Latina. I'm like, sure, you know, I'm Hispanic. Yes, Latina meaning from Latin America. Okay, and Hispanic. We take over the whole Central and South America, right? So we own it. But I do agree with both of you that we need to recognize our individualities pertaining to where we're from. Each one of us, although we all speak Spanish, right? We cannot say certain things in different countries because, woo, you know, we will get eyebrows and, you know, all this kind of look. So we need to be recognize our individuality as different countries that make up the Hispanic heritage. We have a lot of power, economic power for sure.
Thank you so much for those responses. Seeing that you are Hispanics yourself and are in environments like college and working with people where you are exposed to certain situations, from your experience, what are the most common challenges within the Hispanic community?
From my personal experience, I've seen two challenges in my community. And one of them is that sometimes it's hard to identify with some people and actually find a community because there's so many different Hispanics that are, I mean, there's so many countries that are part of the name Hispanic and the name Latino. And sometimes you can't really relate to them because we all have our own history. And I mean, our culture is similar. However, sometimes we go through just different experiences because of how our culture is. Like me, as being a Caribbean, I'm from Dominican Republic, I don't really share that many things in common with a person, let's say from Spain, besides the language. And sometimes it's just hard to find a one single community. And another thing that one of the other struggles that I actually found, and that was in mainly high school, is that a lot of people that are Hispanics will come from their countries and will have a little bit of a problem understanding the language and actually being able to just pass your class, because it's really hard to understand math and history and science when you can't even understand the language. And there's a lot of schools that don't provide actual resources for students to actually learn. I mean, there's some programs, but however, they still have to go through every single class and learn differently from other people. I mean, I came in 8th grade and the system was just really different, and the language was, of course, like really hard to comprehend. But it's just sometimes we can't find a way to help our Hispanic communities when it comes to the language barrier.
I think in working with, our nonprofit has been around for more than 20 years. And I think just having knowledge of what's available in the community is one of the biggest hurdles and obstacles to the community. But even beyond that, just being a Hispanic-led, Hispanic-serving organization, and Florida had mentioned it when she first started, that her mom would say that she had to work harder. My mom, that was always something that was instilled in us. She always said, you know, you have to try twice as hard as your counterparts, because some people automatically assume that you're not as smart, that you're not as prepared, that you can't do the same things other people can do. So as a Hispanic-led, Hispanic-serving organization, that's something that we often see. You know, we're competing with other organizations to make sure that they know that our community deserves respect. It deserves funds to be able to do and attain the same things that other communities do. So that for me is one of our biggest things. It's just making sure that people understand that, you know, we're not a checkbox that you just kind of check off and say, okay, you know, during Hispanic Heritage Month, I donated $1,000 to Hispanic nonprofit. I care about Latinos. It's, you know, what are you doing year round to make sure that you're helping communities, that you're getting resources to that community? An example is a free clinic that we opened for uninsured. The majority of our patients, I think, but 5 have been Hispanic, not by, you know, because of what we do or what we specifically set out to do, but one of our priorities is making sure that we had a language and cultural competency, that our patients felt comfortable coming in to see us, that our providers speak Spanish, you know, that they're able to get the services in the language that they deserve. And the pushback, you know, from the community was, well, there's other free clinics. Why do you need to open? And it's because we need to do it our way. You know, pre-COVID, when you walked in, we gave you a hug. Not so much now, but, you know, we made sure that they felt welcome, that when Abuela was coming and their daughter was still there and the, you know, nieces and nephews still came, that they understood that we travel as a family everywhere, you know. In my late 30s, and when I have a doctor's appointment, you know, I still call my mom and we still go together. So some people don't understand that, you know, that they kind of look at you in the waiting room and go, why is her mom coming? She's an adult. So there's some things that just don't change. And that part of our community, I think it's important for people to understand. I'm sure at Valencia, you guys know it, when you have a new student coming in, you know, and the whole family came, abuela, abuelo, tios, everybody, because it's an experience and everybody wants to celebrate, you know, that first generation college student. So it's making sure that people, you know, through our daily experiences, we're continuously educating the community of the things that are important to us and how they can facilitate how we're a part of their community.
I so agree. And I just want to acknowledge that there are other cultures. Wajan is Middle Eastern. And I just want to recognize that our cultures are very similar in the respect that family is key. And when our first student goes off to college, the whole family shows up. And this was something that we tried to explain to a lot of people at the college, right? In the admissions office and everything. I said, it's not that they're not independent, this is part of the culture, right? They're very proud, they're excited. And so they're very, lots of similarities between our cultures, the Middle Eastern culture and the Hispanic culture. And as you know, your history, right? For 700 years, the Moors lived in Spain, right? So we have many of the same traditions that they do. So the challenges within the Hispanic community is one of the most important things that I feel is that we separate, right? We become the Venezuelans, we become the Colombians, we become, you know, the Puerto Rican, the Dominican, and we tend to forget that if we collaborate collectively, right? If we come together, there is so much power there. The Hispanic vote, everybody's fighting for the Hispanic vote. The Hispanic dollar, everybody's fighting for the Hispanic dollar because we spend money, right? And so if we come in collectively, right, the power there, we tend to forget about all those countries south of the border. But those countries are important for the United States. So I think that's important that we start looking at how we can come together collectively to make our community stronger. I also feel that it's important for education, not just, education. You encountered the language situation, Fior, when you first got here from the Dominican Republic. And yes, that can be challenging. Some schools do not have an ESL program or something that's, close enough to that. And so I think those are challenges that many of our schools, especially in Florida, where they do not put a lot of money towards education, right? The education budget is constantly being cut. And I think that education is important for our Hispanic community, and that that everyone at all schools have the same abilities. And that's something not just within the Hispanic community, but in many other different communities that they're constantly fighting for. So it's the education aspect that is important. So when she's talking about the medical situation, yes, it makes a big difference, right? When somebody's sick, I know for me and my mom that, there was 3 or 4 of us when we were taking her to the hospital and things like that, and everybody was in the room and it was full. So, those kinds of things are important. So it's the education, those are the challenges, and making sure that they have the resources, and then, the medical care. But most important, I think, is that we need to come in and start looking at as how we can work together collectively so that we can have a stronger voice out there.
Focusing on this last question, and for what Ida said about education, some common terms in English cannot be precisely translated or have other meanings in other languages, like in Spanish.
No se embarazada. And I was like, they took the word embarrassed and made it Spanish, right? Just by adding an A.